doctorate degrees in Islamic Studies from the University Institute for Islamic Studies in Lebanon. And Dr. Nchazi recently started as a professor of Islamic Studies at the University of Oklahoma. So we'll have each of you...
Oklahoma City.
Oh, Oklahoma City, excuse me.
They're here, so...
So we're going to give each of them 10 minutes, and then if we have time, we'll do a Q&A, but we have to be done by 8:35, which is the call to prayer this evening. So I'll leave you to it. Dr. Tabing, if you would like to begin.
Oh. For Jewish time.
Oh.
I'm sitting in the middle this year.
You're here. We go by traditions, so Jewish tradition is bad.
I like it when the blues come. Thank you very much. I love this year that the Jewish major fast of Tisha B'Av, the fast of the 9th of Av, fell again during Ramadan. I always love when that happens because then we can all be miserable together. And having been in Israel once when that happened, you know, it was 6 happy Christians, 10 happy Hindus, and a lot of really miserable Jews and Muslims just going. So one of the things that I get asked a lot as a rabbi is, why do you have all these commandments? Jews have 613 commandments. I will not list them now, or ever. Why would you bother having all those commandments? Plenty of people get by with 10 just well enough. Many people seem to do a perfectly wonderful life without any formal commandments. What's the purpose of them? Well, Jews are always cautioned against giving a reason where God didn't give a reason, because you're smarter than I am, I give you a reason, you think about my reason, and now you've thought yourself out of a commandment because I'm not as smart as you. But what I can always say is, here's what they do for me. In my own personal journey into an observant Jewish life in a traditional Jewish context, one of the things that taking on the commandments did for me was to make me very aware of the world around me and to make me very aware of my place in it, you know, because there's a lot to think about. I mean, and I know for our Muslim brothers and sisters who observe halal dietary restrictions, I'm preaching to the converted, borrowing someone else's phrase. But I know it's, there's a lot to think about. There are a lot of moving parts, especially for a Jew who keeps kosher. When did I eat that? What was it? Who made it? Where did it come from? And then when you really jump into the entire system, was it stolen? Did it fall off the back of a truck? Was the person who picked it treated well? Were the animals involved treated well? It keeps going on. How am I behaving to the people I'm eating with? It goes on. Of course, then we just did Tisha B'Av and a 26-hour fast. And then I remembered what I always forget during the rest of the year, which is that fasting actually makes me more mindful of my body than eating. It keeps me focused on all of those things that I usually have. This is just me. This is the world according to Abby. It keeps me thinking about what I always have, what I'm always blessed with, but more than that, what I tend to take for granted, even despite needing to know everything that's in the food I'm about to eat, to know which blessing to say before it and after it, and when I last ate something and what I'm about to eat later in case I need to shift my timing between meat and dairy and driving. Do we have enough time to drive to Dallas this month to get more kosher meat and that kind of thing, which is enough to think about. Even so, some of it becomes habitual and routine. And for me, one of the beautiful things is that a fast day really brings that forward for me and brings forward the act and the process of eating, where it fits into my body and where it fits into my life. And sometimes fast days turn into, God, I want a hamburger. Because we're human and we do that. And sometimes it turns into, how busy can I make myself today? And sometimes it turns into, 5 hours 33 minutes, 5 hours 32 minutes, 5 hours 31 minutes. And sometimes, when I'm in the right frame of mind, it turns into something amazing. Fasting occurs in Judaism at prescribed times, but also on prescribed occasions. The Tractate of the Talmud, the biggest collection of our oral law, that deals with fasting, which is called Masechet Ta'anit, the Tractate of Fasting, has almost nothing to do with the major fast days on our calendar, and has almost everything to do with fasting when you don't have enough rain. We remember what last year was like, and we can certainly feel what this year is like. And so people always say to me, well, why should we be not eating when it's, it must be because we won't have enough crops. We won't eat 3 days over the next 2 weeks because we're saving our food, right? Okay, that's smart, but there's more than that. To intensify prayer. And I say it, and I don't always feel it. This year I got lucky enough to feel it. To feel like putting myself in this position put me in the middle of a web of my life and really focused that entire web onto my relationship with God. I don't know what it is about fasting. I don't know whether it's not having to worry about food preparation and cleanup. I don't know whether it's lightheadedness. I don't know whether it's something to do with denying the body or granting the body a new experience, or identifying with people who need help, or identifying with heavenly beings who don't have to eat. I don't know what it is, but something about it for me this year really focused the entire web of my life and the commandments toward God. It was an incredible gift. I don't know that I'll ever be able to do that again, or that I'll ever be granted that again. But looking at Jewish tradition and knowing that these occur, these opportunities for using fasting occur to intensify prayer, to intensify focus on a moment of either great joy or great sadness, is a very special thing. I'm not sure that I'm not sure that I can rightly say, especially with a rabbinic colleague in the room, I'm not sure that I can rightly say the Jewish anything, right? But I can say that's what happened for me this year on my fast day. And I was doubly blessed to be able to say to my Jewish brothers and sisters, our Muslim brothers and sisters are doing this year too, at the same time with us. So think about all that amazing prayer energy which is focused right now and is going out right now, and think of all the gratitude that's going to be released into the world tonight when we break our fast. And isn't it amazing to be able to say that this is what's being put out into the world right now, that we're part of it. Thank you for letting me be part of this.
As you know, there are 4 Christian Gospels which tell the story of the life and ministry of Jesus. And 3 of them start off that story by saying that Jesus went out into the desert and fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. 2 of those Gospels, Matthew and Luke, have an amazing statement at the end of it. And they say, after it was all over, he was famished. It means he was very hungry. Of course he was. We're not surprised. But things are not always as they appear to be. Jesus wasn't a Christian, he was a Jew. Jesus' 40 days and 40 nights are probably a very symbolic number, just like the 40 years in the wilderness and the 40 days and nights of Noah. But what seems to me to be very important about that story is that at the end of that story is another one, which is the so-called temptation story, which emphasizes what Abby just said about fasting. Because the insight, because of the intensity and the focus of Jesus during those whether they were literally 40 days and 40 nights or not, was that he came to the insight that for him to exist as a human being, as a teacher, as someone who was going to give an example, three things were important. One of them was that human existence is not based on bread alone. Ordinary food, physical food, is just part of it. It is the spiritual food, the relationship to God, that is important. The second one was the insight that he received through that fasting was that compromise with evil is never permissible. And the third one was that God has given us all the resources that we need, including the food, and there isn't going to be some sort of supernatural plucking you out of difficult situations, because what we need to do is to use and utilize that which we have been given. The other thing that's interesting about the story of Jesus and fasting is that there is an ambiguity in the story about fasting. Jesus, as you know, was a disciple once of John the Baptist, this crazy character with a hairy shirt with locusts dripping between his teeth. And he fasted, totally, virtually. And some of John the Baptist's disciples came to Jesus' disciples one day and said, "Why doesn't your teacher fast and practice asceticism the way that John the Baptist does?" And Jesus' answer was that fasting is important, but there is more to life than fasting. Fasting gives us the focus, but it is only there to be, for a while, intentional and to intensify the experience that we have with God, and it is very, very important. But it is not all that there is to life. That life is meant to be enjoyed, that everything that God has created is a gift from God. And so this ambiguity that started way from there, I think, has carried through into Christianity. Christianity has had a very ambiguous relationship to fasting. There are some parts of Christianity that has been very intense about it and intentional, and has laid down some very rigorous rules about how to fast and to carry on that practice. And there are other parts of Christianity which have simply said, well, it's really up to the individual, that the individual needs to recognize that there are moments when they need to and must focus, that there are some things, as Jesus had once said, that cannot be done apart from prayer and fasting. But then the rest of it is sort of left to the individual's conscience and practice. In the early church, people fasted on Wednesdays and Fridays, and then they had a fight, and they said, well, we're not going to fast like the hypocrites do on Wednesdays and Fridays, we're not going to fast on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or maybe on Saturdays. And some people said, we'll fast for half a day, and other people will say, we'll fast for a long time. There are others who said there are special days of fasting, just as there are in other traditions. But the majority of Christians have tended to focus, at least more recently, on fasting at the time that is before the Christian Easter, when in the Christian liturgy people relive the life and the ministry of Jesus and prepare for celebrating that death, that resurrection, and in the Christian faith, that resurrected part of the life of Christ. And so for 40 days, that magical number of the Exodus and Noah's Ark and the 40 days of Jesus fasting in the wilderness, there are 40 days before Easter that are called Lent. And it's then particularly that Christians fast, or they might just abstain from some things or give up some things, but ideally fasting is an important part of that particular practice, in addition to personal days or times when They want to celebrate something. The Greek Orthodox Church has many more fasting days than maybe the Methodists do, or the Disciples of Christ, or whatever that might be. But altogether, what we learn from fasting are those same lessons that Jesus discovered when he was in the wilderness for that particular time. But there's one other thing I want to say, and that is that in interfaith dialogue and discussions, we have, over the last decade, had a reversal, almost like a paradigm shift. We used to get together and we used to spend a lot of time talking to each other and trying to find out what the commonality was, to say, well, the differences aren't so great after all, these are the things that are the same. And we can say the same thing about fasting. We can look at all the traditions and we can see how similar things are in some ways. But that's not the point anymore, because we've grown beyond that, I believe. Because now we say, how much difference can we celebrate in each other's traditions and learn from those and embrace those? So from the Christian perspective, I want to thank our Islamic brothers and sisters and our Jewish brothers and sisters for doing something which I think Christianity has somewhat lost: the intentionality, the discipline of fasting much more than we do. And I hope and pray that as Christians we can learn, we can celebrate, and we can embrace what you have to teach us in this regard. Thank you.
Rabbi Harris, congratulations. And as we say, when somebody become a new imam, we say condolences, so I don't know. And you forgot it's VIP. I get VIP treatment at the airport, very Islamic personality treatment. I tell you, I'm fasting, so I always use this verse when it comes to fasting. All the Muslims know this verse. So this verse has three components. It said fasting has been prescribed upon you, it has been prescribed on the people before you, so you may attain piety. So fasting from the Muslim perspective, the outcome of fasting is piety. And the first word, let's look at the first word, it said fasting. From the Muslim perspective, when we say the word fasting, we fast from